When I first saw the initial maps for the upcoming West Connex road, I was concerned. Stage 3 of the 33-kilometre tunnel seemed alarmingly close to my house in Newtown, and I feared about the changes in store for the vibrant inner west community I and so many others loved. Wanting to find out more, I attended a community meeting at Leichhardt Town Hall in 2013. Despite being impressed by the knowledge and spirit of the campaigners, I remember quietly thinking to myself, but what hope do we, residents, really have in stopping this road? I felt despondent and hopeless. And it would seem I wasn't alone in my pessimism. Campaigners for the No West Connex told me that the most frequent comment they received from the community was, but what will campaigning really achieve? Surely at this stage, West Connex is inevitable. But is this pessimism unfounded? Sydney has a long history of campaigners and residents successfully coming together to save their neighbourhoods from road projects. While most of us are familiar with the efforts of Jack Mundy in saving the Rocks, Annandale and other historic areas, many of us are still largely unaware of the achievements of smaller community-led campaigns. This video will follow the story of the Johnston's Creek extension, and it's an example of one such smaller, successful and largely forgotten grassroots campaign. The Johnston's Creek extension was a planned extension of the F6, which, if it had been built, would have meant the creation of a 4-lane highway through Newtown, Enmore and Randwick, following a similar route to the one shown in this video. Obviously, it would have involved the demolition of hundreds of homes and historic businesses. In order to learn more about the campaign, I approached Michelle Zybots, a transport planner at UTS, who was the first to realise in 2003 that the Labor government was planning to build a highway through Newtown and Randwick. Michelle drew me a timeline of the events of the Johnston's Creek campaign and labelled the announcement of the proposed M4 East extension, not the Johnston's Creek extension, as the starting point. This is because, in June 2004, the then Minister for Roads, Michael Costa, revealed plans for an extension of the M4 East from Strathfield to the Anzac Bridge. Yet due to her background in planning, Michelle realised that these plans would create an enormous amount of concentrated traffic at the base of Anzac Bridge, which would then need to be funnelled into the inner west. Michelle, like many planners, was well aware that a road reservation had existed along the Johnston's Creek extension since the 1940s. It is shown on this map in teal. Matt Hounsell, the co-convener of Eco-Transit, explains how road reservations came to exist across Sydney.
During the 1940s, there was the Garden City movement, the idea being that our cities could be great places, but to be great places they needed to be planned. Now, part of this planning was planning for your roads and your trains and your sewers before people put their houses down. The idea being that if you reserved a certain space of road, then people could build their houses back from the edge of the road, and that it wouldn't require demolishing people's homes when you put them in the future. Also, so that people could then know, well, there's a road here. I might not want to buy that property because it won't be there in the future.
Michelle had no doubt in her mind that the government would build the Johnston's Creek extension in order to funnel traffic off the newly announced M4 extension. Furthermore, the RTA had slowly been buying properties along the Johnston's Creek extension, particularly on streets like Liberty Street and Enmore, and leasing them out to the public until such a time that they decided to build the highway. However, many residents were unaware that they lived on a road reservation at all. Here, Matt Hounsell explains how it can be difficult for residents to find information on road reservations.
The bureaucracy at the time was not always up to date with the latest ideals in planning, and they often kept plans secret or didn't promote them in a way that you would actually expect for something so major. So the Department of Main Roads would have had those plans published, and they would have been available if the local council, if you knew to go looking for them. So if you were looking for a house, your solicitor should actually inform you if there are any road reservations or any government covenants on the property. But if you're not looking, if you just happen to be living in the area, you may never have known that the RMS planned to take your house and widen the road. Now, the RMS owns a lot of property around Sydney in a lot of reservations. One of the reservations they owned, of course, the Johnston's Creek extension. They owned properties on Liberty Street. I actually bought my property after the reservation was lifted from the RMS, who hadn't been maintaining it too well.
Furthermore, Michelle was not the only one who believed the government had its eyes set on building the Johnston's Creek extension. Greens councillor and local Colin Hesse was also convinced that building the Johnston's Creek extension, and roads in general, was a main prerogative of the then Labor state government.
The Johnston's Creek extension was a key link. At the time they were looking at doing the whole thing on the surface rather than with tunnels as they're talking about now. So it was part of that bigger context of the motorway madness that I think that people had bought into in the post-war era from 1949 when a lot of those road reservations were made.
Colin and others quickly realised the dire consequences the Johnston's Creek extension would have on their inner west community if it went ahead. As Matt Hounsell explained to me,
that road reservation would have required the demolition of a lot of houses.
Determined to stop the destruction of their neighbourhood, Michelle Zybots and other campaigners sprung into action. Firstly, they created this pamphlet advertising a community meeting on the Johnston's Creek extension. Seasoned campaigners such as Jack Mundy attended, along with community action groups such as Eco-Transit. A while later, in March 2005, Eco-Transit published 2 4-page news leafs informing residents of the potentially disastrous impacts of the Johnston's Creek extension on their area. 100,000 copies were printed, 60,000 were distributed in Randwick, while 40,000 were handed out in Newtown and Enmore. To follow, a group of 10 campaigners door-knocked residents informing them about the Johnston's Creek extension and the possibility that their homes could be demolished if it went ahead. I asked one of the 10 campaigners, Colin Hesse, what his recollections were about the reaction from residents.
Door-knocking Edgware Road in particular, which would have been taken out, particularly I think the western side would have been taken out by the motorway extension. In reality, it would have taken out more than that, I think. Mm-hmm. But the reaction was, I think, mostly to shock, anger from some residents, I know. Some didn't want to believe it, I guess. But it was pretty electric. People were very upset instantly. And that was confrontational. I know we talked about that in the lead up, because I know we were concerned that we were just simply seen as stirrers and that we would, say, well, you're creating this for political opportunism.
It is important to remember that at this point, plans to build the Johnston's Creek extension still hadn't even been confirmed by the state government. Although Michelle had no doubt in her mind that the government had plans to build the road, Eco-Transit and the Greens were leaving themselves wide open to being accused of fear-mongering by Labor. Furthermore, the retirement of long-standing member for Marrickville, Andrew Revshorgi, in 2005 meant that relations between the campaigners and Labor were increasingly fraught, as Labor and the Greens battled it out to win the upcoming by-election. Here is an ABC radio podcast from 2005.
In election terms, tomorrow is a mini Super Saturday in New South Wales, with 3 by-elections following the rash of resignations from what used to be the Carr Labor government. Most attention is focused on the multicultural inner west electorate of Marrickville, until recently the seat of the former Treasurer and Deputy Premier Andrew Revshorgi. Marrickville's been in Labor hands ever since it was created, but with more young middle-class voters moving in and without a Liberal candidate, the Greens see it as their best chance of getting a lower house seat in the New South Wales Parliament. But it's not just locals who'll be watching. The federal electorate of Graindler, which takes in Marrickville, is considered one of the seats most likely to go Green in a federal election. So a win in the state electorate would be a serious boost for the party. Labor's taking the threat seriously and has persuaded the high-profile Upper House Minister for Education and Training, Carmel Tebbit, to run for the seat.
Colin and the other campaigners were acutely aware of the importance of this by-election on their relations with Labor.
And of course it was very much Labor heartland. I mean, that's only 10 years ago, but it was seen by the Labor Party as Labor heartland, and they were very angry about the rise of the Greens in the inner west. In fact, the ward I represented, North Ward, Newtown, Enmore, Stanmore, had returned, of the 3 councillors in that ward, they returned 2 Greens councillors out of the 3, I was one of them. So Labor was feeling very defensive and very angry, and indeed they did respond.
Furthermore, the eco-transit campaign was gaining traction within the inner west. As Matt Hounsell explains,
the strong community campaign really clicked in with the people of the inner west at that stage, and people looked at the proposal and went, why would you build a road here? All you're going to do is make our lives worse. The strong community campaign fed into the local political landscape. So with a Labor government, a Labor council, the Greens nipping at the Labor heels, the right time to leverage the local politics.
Carmel Tebbit did go on to win the election, but not without sustaining a significant swing towards the Greens. As the Sydney Morning Herald reported, the closest result was in Marrickville, where the Greens recorded a primary vote of about 40%, their highest in any state or federal election. With Labor's re-election, it became more important than ever to discover whether Labor actually did have imminent plans to build the Johnston Creek extension. Greens Senator Lee Rhiannon pressured Michael Costa to reveal Labor's hand regarding the road. Lee supplied me with these Greens media releases from the time. Perhaps unsurprisingly, soon after taking office, Carmel Tebbit and Labor threatened to sue the Greens, Eco-Transit and the Marrickville Transport Action Group for defamation. Carmel Tebbit distributed this letter to her constituents in an attempt to allay their fears regarding the road. I am writing to you in response to a leaflet being circulated by the Marrickville Transport Action Group claiming that homes, churches and schools along Edgware Road, Liberty Street, Kingston Road and more could be bulldozed. This claim is simply untrue and dishonest. Colin recounted his memories of this incident to me recently.
Labor hated it. They accused us of scaring people to death, of basically lying to the community.
Still believing that plans for the Johnston Creek extension did exist, Lee Rhiannon put in a call for documents from the Labor government in an effort to find any documents that may prove that plans for the Johnston Creek extension were in the pipeline. According to key campaigner Michelle Zybots, the government released a mountain of documents. As Colin Hesse described,
So one motive is that they'll just put out everything. They'll put out 50 million copies of some inane email from a public servant to another public servant about who's getting the donuts for a meeting. I'm not kidding that. I've seen those. And they'll also restrict a lot of the really serious documents. And only people who can see them are sitting MPs. But there are always gems in there, and it's what you're looking for, the confirmation of discussion by the government of what you're saying. And as I say, we weren't making it up.
Eco-Transit member Mary Jane Gleeson spent an entire week sorting through every single document that was given to the Greens. Amongst it all was one email that confirmed what Michelle Zybots, Eco-Transit and the Marrickville Transport Action Group had been arguing all along, that there were indeed plans to build the Johnston Creek extension. The email in question consisted of an email exchange between engineers at the RTA referring to the construction of the road. Sadly, this email has since been lost. Carmel Tebbit was then approached with this email and apparently looked shocked to hear that the Johnston Creek extension was actually happening. To her credit, as soon as she was given proof, Carmel quietly and successfully lobbied her own government to not only stop the road from happening, but to also lift the road reservation along the Johnston Creek extension entirely. It is unknown whether Carmel had any knowledge of the Johnston Creek extension herself prior to seeing the email Mary Jane found. I approached Carmel Tebbit for comment, but she was unavailable. Matt Hounsell believes that various political factors enabled Carmel Tebbit to lift the road reservation in her electorate.
Luckily for the local community, local member Carmel Tebbit was well connected within the Labor Party. Very quickly, after being told about the reservation, she understood what its impacts would be on her community. When the campaign to lift the Johnston Creek extension spoke to Carmel Tebbit, she immediately understood what the proposal was, what the impacts on the local community would be, And she quite quickly said that, oh, I understand it, and I think that reservation should be removed. She was able to take this as a well-respected member of the Labor Party into the cabinet and argue very strongly for her local community. The strong community voice gave her strong support and made the cabinet feel that, yes, perhaps this is something that we should look at doing. She also had strong support from ministers who were critical thinkers. One of the big problems you have with bureaucracy is you need a critical thinker to assess their projects, to make sure that their projects add up. And Carl Scully and other ministers at that time were looking, and Craig Knowles were looking very carefully at the road reservations and saying, does this add up? And in many cases the answers financially and socially and environmentally were no.
So, with the lifting of the reservation in March 2006, the battle against the Johnston's Creek extension was won. Homes were saved. However, tragically, Mary Jane died suddenly in 2007, only 1 year after saving the homes of hundreds of residents. Many locals haven't heard of Mary Jane and are unaware of the debt they owe her. Colin remembers how Mary Jane's communicating skills were invaluable to the Johnston's Creek campaign.
Yeah, well, this is actually where I met Mary Jane, who sadly passed away not that many years later. Mary Jane sort of, to me, came out of nowhere. But she lived in the area, and Mary Jane was just a brilliant organiser, I think, and just got us organised. I think, and that's really important if you're a councillor, as I was at the time, an elected politician, and councillors don't get paid enough to do the job full time. I was working as a union organiser at the time. I had no time to scratch myself. Mary Jane was the kind of person who could simply organise us and other members of the community to do the work to raise that issue in the community effectively. And you need those people in political campaigns, in community campaigns, who can come in, have that big picture, which she did. She understood what the issues were incredibly clearly, and understood how to organise people. The need to consult with people, to bring people together and to get them out on the street to engage with the community. That's really important, and I think we did that, and that's a real testament to Mary Jane.
Colin was also quick to note that, although the battle for Johnston's Creek was won, a road reservation still exists in St Peters and will be the new site of an LA-style highway entrance for the upcoming West Connex.
As a result of that campaign, they withdrew the road reservation over Eritrea Road and up through Enmore Stanmore. That was withdrawn completely. The surface road reservation was withdrawn, but they kept the road reservation down through St Peters, and that's the bit of reservation which right now is contentious with West Connex. That's what the government want to use for their tunnel entrance.
Much like the current No West Connex campaign, the battle against the Johnston's Creek extension involved common campaign tactics such as leaflet dropping and calling on documents. Although these actions may sometimes feel fruitless, the history of Johnston's Creek extension serves as proof to residents of how grassroots, community-led campaigns can actually lead to very real and positive outcomes for neighbourhoods and the people who live in them.
They paved paradise, put up a parking lot with a pink hotel, a boutique, and a swinging hot spot. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They took all the trees, put them in a tree museum, and they charged the people $1.50 just to see them. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot.